Hello and welcome to this writing vlog. My name is Rhianna and I'm trying to publish my first novel. So I've made one other writing vlog on this channel back in February, and back then I was working on a novel that I really had hope in, but somewhere along the way I started to be excited by it, which I think can happen sometimes, and sometimes that's a false inclination and it's just because you've been working on it too much. Maybe you need a break and to come back to it. But I found that after I had a break I wasn't feeling, inspired to go back to it. And when it was the beginning of March, I went to Italy and I did a road trip around Italy, and as a consequence I was on lots of trains and buses, and I find that when I'm traveling around my imagination is most alight because I see lots of things and lots of people, and I really love writing about how humans work. Being alive, such a crazy thing. It's really weird, and I love trying to kind of work out how humans exist in this kind of sad yet wonderful world. So I came up with this idea on the trip, and when I got back from Italy I started to write it, and something happened which is kind of magic for me when it comes to writing. And I just wrote it. I wrote maybe 50,000 words in 3 weeks, and I think that's a good sign. It doesn't always mean the novel's going to be good, because I have looked back at some of the things I wrote and I'm interesting. But I think it's a good sign when you're just really inspired by the book that you're writing and want to work on it all the time. I mean, that's the dream as a writer. So yes, back in March I wrote the first draft of this book. Since then I've been slowly editing it. I think the editing process for me is much longer than the first draft process, because usually I really need to write fast initially, because otherwise I'll just forget the things that I've written before, and then that can lead me down the path of not being inspired to write the book, because I'm am I just repeating myself? I can't remember what I wrote earlier, and it's very difficult to keep just starting from the beginning of the novel and trying to comb your way through it when you're drafting, because then it can just take a long time. So it was very good that I wrote it fast, and I've been editing slowly. But for the past few weeks I haven't really been working on the novel. I went to Turkey and I've been busy with work, and I found myself with a few free hours today before I start teaching later on, and I thought, let's try and read through the novel. We'll see how much I get done today. My goal is just to read the first 5,000 words, because when you send a novel on submission, you usually send the first 5,000 words with a summary and a query letter. So I'm just going to read through the first 5,000 words and try and get that the best it can be. And that's my goal for today. I have a bowl of cherries. Very nice. And I'm ready to go. So let's get started. Hello, here is an update after the first 1,000 words, and it's going quite well. I haven't had to change so much, and I think what is quite nice is this novel is written in the first person, and the narrator is very much writing from her perspective, and as a consequence she could be argued to be a bit of an unreliable narrator, which I really like in novels. Can you really trust what she's saying? Because sometimes I remember this from when I was writing, she says one thing in one chapter, then a few chapters later she says the opposite, but it wasn't intentional, and I feel it feels intentional in the novel. It could be interpreted as me not understanding the character well, but I think it really works for her because she's kind of very unsure of who she is, but also at the same time tries to convince the reader that she's very sure about who she is. And there is a line from these first 1,000 words that I thought I'd share, and it's, how can we have a sure clasp on who we are when our brains are so affected by what we see and what we hear that we are constantly changing our minds and changing ourselves, and whoops, now I'm a different person. So another quick update, I realise that in my writing I use then a lot when it's not needed. So I'm sort of combing through and the document now and finding the cases where I use then and omitting them. Like sometimes a then works quite nicely, like it really shows the progression of things, but sometimes it's not needed. For example, in the sentence, if they managed to place the item in your hands, they would then demand money. Like the then is not needed. You could just say, if they managed to place the item in your hands, they would demand money. So I'm still going through the first 5,000 words, and there is a line, if you can make yourself impressed by an oven, then you'll probably be okay, which I thought was quite funny. I think I was thinking about how in the modern world, the appliances and like things that we have are so amazing. Like a shower, isn't a shower so cool? And like an oven, it's so cool. But of course, because they're so commonplace, it's like taken for granted. When actually I think, you know, if you spent time living outside and then you were brought into a flat that had a shower and an oven, you would be like, oh, this is the most brilliant thing, and I think it would help feel better. I don't know, I suppose something that the novel is exploring is why in the modern world with all these amazing things do people still feel depressed? And I suppose that's a difficult question to answer, but the novel kind of explores that a little bit. So it's a bit later and I've read the first 5,000 words, and the first 5,000 words also makes up the first chapter, which is quite nice. And I think it kind of works, which is good. There was only one big edit that I had to make, which was there was a paragraph and then another paragraph, and they said kind of similar things in both of them, so I just merged them together because I didn't want that repetition there, and that worked well. And yeah, I sometimes get this thing when I read over my work, and it's something akin to anxiety, and it's kind of sad that I feel a negative emotion when reading because, I mean, writing is my favourite thing and I love it, but the anxiety stems from how I worry that I will die before I can finish the book or before I can publish the book. I think that's always been something that happens with my writing, and I think it's because I've wanted to publish a novel since I was a teenager, for many, many years, and I get worried that something's gonna happen and I'm not ever gonna see it become a reality. And the anxiety is almost heightened because this novel is really nearly finished, and I worry that, you know, it's like something bad will happen just before I reach that goal that I've been trying to attain for so long. But, you know, I think anxiety, it doesn't really solve anything. It doesn't help me in any way. It's just a futile emotion, and so I should just banish it, but I'm a bit inept at doing so. So for now, I will sit with the anxiety, and I mean, I try to think, this helps, I try to think, you know, the book could get published and no one could read it, or the book could just not get published, and then nothing will happen with it. Like, I try to think it, like, pessimistically, because it makes me feel better. But yeah, I would just really like to see myself achieve like the goal. I think it sounds really sad to work for so long to achieve something and then to die just before you achieve it. Anyway, the first 5,000 words are done. And I think what's going to happen now is over the next few days, I will continue reading the novel, and hopefully I will get through the whole thing. Maybe I will need to let it sit and then read it through again, because I think there's always things that I'm going to miss. But at some point, I'm hoping in the near future, I will be able to create a list of literary agents and send the novel out, which is a bit terrifying because, yes, I could just hear nothing back. And then it's kind of like, well, I mean, you can self-publish, but I would really like to traditionally publish. So we'll see what happens. And I like making these writing vlogs, so I hope to keep making them. And I would like to keep writing today, keep editing today, but I do have to teach, which is unfortunate. I mean, I do enjoy teaching English online, but if it were up to me, I would just be a full-time writer and reader as well, because those are just my favorite activities. And yeah, I guess we can say that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you in another video soon. Bye-bye.